Why choose O gauge? There's all sorts of different model train sizes and scales out there, so why have we decided to surround our couch down here with these weird looking 3-rail tracks? Well, today I want to point out the good and not exactly ignore the bad, but at least bring up, I think there's a perception that changes when you think about these things from a certain element that makes these fun. Let's check it out.
4023 here. Are we clear through the next junction?
For those of you who've been following me for a while, you're probably surprised to even see a piece of tubular down here. Nearly everything we have is on this fast track. But yes, Lionel and just O-gauge trains in general, these 3-rail tracks started out ages ago. These were toy trains, and I think that's an element that gets overlooked. Now, that's not to say that you can't make something incredibly realistic and amazing. We'll get to that in a moment. But 3 rails, while it does get kind of put down for not being prototypical, not being realistic, this does honestly keep things a little bit more fun. These started their lives as toy trains, and because of those roots, you see a more diverse landscape of different types of ways that these trains can be enjoyed. From a loop of track around the Christmas tree, to something up on a table, to incredible layouts with intense levels of realism that would make any scale modeler blush. So it's not that you can't get realistic with O-gauge because there's a 3rd rail. There are plenty out there that have proven that wrong. But because there's a 3rd rail, because these are tied to all sorts of different eras, the post-war era is really big on kind of being a little bit more toy-like, a little bit more fun, and there's a lot of nostalgia that comes with that. Now, if you're new to the hobby, that nostalgia may not exist, so looking at post-war can get a little bit confusing if you're used to seeing, scale models in a realistic setting that is true to life and all that other stuff. But there is an element to O-gauge that a lot of other scales lack because of the size. I'm talking, of course, about animated features with these trains and tracks and trackside features that have kind of evolved along with the original Lionel sets that had, the little signalmen coming out of the side of the building, and whistles and interactive elements with loading cars and unloading cars and crossing guards and all these moving things. And it really brings these trains to life. So despite not being the most prototypical, realistic, you could count the rivets on it kind of thing, there's movement, there's life to these things. There's amazing examples out there that have all of these animated elements that bring the layout to life that you really can't replicate or replicate easily with smaller scales. It's literally just a size thing. It's easier to cram a guy coming out of a boxcar when the boxcar is the size of this piece of track, There's a lot more space to work with, and with that, you have a lot more built-in fun with these things. Because all of these moving features have their ties to post-war and just earlier kind of more toy train setups in general, I feel like there's more variety of layouts that you can see, and what I've tried to do here is kind of blend the two. I have a kid that loves playing with these trains, and so I needed to make a space that was kid safe, which is why there's carpet everywhere on this table. There's not, fake grass and ballast and sand and all this stuff that he could ruin. But I have tried to go for a little bit of realism by adding trees and backdrops and buildings and rock walls and tunnels and all sorts of things that you would see on more modern, more realistic looking kind of layouts. So I've tried to blend the best of both worlds in this layout. I'm working towards that at least, and we're always changing things in here. And that's another thing that I like with O-gauge is I feel like this is a scale, this is a size that you can grow into. You can start with, a used post-war set from a hobby shop and then, build upon that. But at the end of the day, the same trains that run on these modern 3 rails, Fast Track or Gargraves or Atlas, are the same trains that can run on these older tubular style tracks that you can still actually pick up at Menards. So either way, I know there's a lot of folks that are like, Fast Track is crap and this, that, and the other. I do think if you're starting out, It's probably a little bit easier to do it with Fast Track because it's a little more readily available. They click together a little bit easier, and it'll protect your carpet if you're starting out on the ground, because this road bed, this plastic road bed, will protect things from dripping down from the trains, like grease and stuff like that. Doesn't happen very often, but enough to the point where you don't want to ruin your carpet. I'm trying my best not to make this a tutorial. If you'd like to see a kind of getting started tutorial for track power and stuff like that, or whatever, let me know. I've been thinking of doing a video like that. Just let me know down in the comments. But back to these trains, again, it's something I feel like you can grow into. And there's a lot of availability out there, and while things are more expensive than other scales of train, you can still, especially on the secondhand market, find great deals on this stuff. I wouldn't have been able to expand our railroad empire down here had it not been for the affordability that the secondhand market offered, especially with rolling stock. Engines are still kind of expensive, especially if you're looking at something that's controlled remotely, or what they typically refer to as command control or things like that. DCS, unfortunately, your digital control systems for N scale and HO, there's not a universal system here, and that is a complaint and a bit of a hurdle to get over if you're getting started with this scale, and that is a bit of an Achilles heel if you ask me. I would love it if Lionel and MTH could just make all of their stuff work with each other, but unless they make a change in the future, all of the stuff over the last 20, 30 years is not going to work with each other. You're still going to have that problem. I do wish that there was a little bit more ease of setting something up in terms of not taking up so much space. But as you can see here, we've still got pretty large engines running around these tighter turns. And that's something that gets overlooked in O-Gauge, to feel like you need this massive, huge, gargantuan space to enjoy them. But a loop of 036 around a Christmas tree almost is too small. You almost need 048 or 060 to go out to the edges of the tree. So if your tree can take up that much room, then certainly a train can as well. Now, there's different ways to approach this, so if you're starting out on the carpet, or if that's where you live anyways, that's fine. I've seen plenty of people enjoy this hobby without making a full-on layout table to enjoy these trains on. And the floor kind of gives you a lot more freedom to be able to have wider turns without being constricted by a table. So the folks that say that it takes up too much room, you can get creative and really have a lot of fun with these trains without them taking up so much space. Now, if you want them to take up space, they certainly can, but a struggle that we ran into was we wanted big trains, but we still only had enough room for small turns. And there are, thankfully, still options for that with the Rail King line and with Lionel's Lion Master line that both bring big steam to smaller layouts. So it's not exactly impossible to enjoy those trains on smaller tracks, but that does bring up the other issue with O-Gauge is there's not really a universal size unless you go with scale. And that's even if they call it scale properly. Because if you go on a website, let's say trainworld.com, this website has tons of O-Gauge stuff, but they call it O-scale. Scale is talking about, true to life proportions. And the starter set Berkshire pulling the Polar Express is under the O-scale banner on their website, but it's definitely not O-scale. It's definitely more O-gauge. Gauge is the distance between the outer tracks. And so O-gauge is typically your downsized, slightly smaller than true-to-life scale size. And that's something that we try and focus on here to be able to make use of the space in here. And it's been a little bit tricky because not everybody's consistent with how things are labeled. It's honestly a little bit frustrating in this hobby when we're trying to collect stuff and stay with a certain size, but the naming and the sizing seems very inconsistent. And you kind of have to know. You have to really do a lot of research to, instead of just, oh, I want that tanker car. It says O-gauge. Great. It shows up and it's dwarfing all of your traditional size stuff. It's probably because it's O-scale. Same thing if you're trying to find this awesome looking boxcar and you put it behind your O-scale train and you realize it's traditional size, it's smaller. Oh man, that's going to look a little bit funny together. So there's definitely a learning curve to collecting this stuff if you want things to be a certain size. If you just want to run stuff behind whatever train, then that's fine. But I feel like I'm a scale snob trapped inside a traditional sized layout because I'm trying my best to get all of my semi-scale stuff to be about the right size. And it doesn't always work out, but it's something that has made collecting fun because I really have to do my research and look into this stuff And I honestly kind of enjoy that fact. Trying to compare photos, compare different box sizes and elements printed on the car to be able to tell. Yeah, it's not easy, but it's definitely doable. So yeah, the sizes are inconsistent. Yeah, there's 3 rails. Yeah, there's, all these weird control systems for them that don't talk to each other. But O-Gauge is still a lot of fun. And I think a lot of that comes from the fact that they just kind of stay honest with this third rail, that there's so many different animated features you can get with it, that there's such a wide range of stuff that you can get. It doesn't all have to be scale prototypical stuff. There's so many ways to enjoy this. So really, if you want a lot of fun with a certain train set, go with the one that started off with fun as toys for kids. Have they evolved now into more scale prototypical kind of engines and such? Yeah, they offer that for the dads that are growing up, that grew up with the toy trains, that want something more realistic. That's a great market, but it's not the only market, and there's more than one way to enjoy this hobby, and that's what I love seeing. I love seeing the diversity, all the different ways that you can do this. So leave a comment down below. If you're already in this, let me know how you're enjoying it. Do you go more for the scale stuff? Do you focus more on traditional or post-war stuff? Do you try and blend stuff like we do? Are you new to this hobby? I would love to help. We all would. At least the folks that aren't hung up on the 3 rails is wrong. No, we're already in this. We've gotten over that. It's so much fun. So let me know down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already. We've got a ton of videos we've done on this stuff. Hit that bell so you can see what's coming up next, and check out our other stuff that we've already made, because especially if you're new, I want this to be a resource for you to be able to look back and see all the stuff that you can do with these trains. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.